Hey, welcome back. Jim Root, part 3 on the dropshot series here. So what I'm going to go over with today are the 3 different types of dropshot weights and what I look for when I'm using my graph before I'm actually on the fish. So as far as the weights go, there's 3 different types of weights. First is your pencil style weight, then you have a teardrop style, and you have a round style dropshot weight. Personally, I only use the pencil style weight, so that's the one I'm going to show you here, but I'll show you images of the other one down here in the corner. So I really like this weight. This is an elite tungsten dropshot weight, pencil style. This happens to be a 3/4 ounce. It's one of the only tungsten companies that will make a 3/4 ounce dropshot weight, and that's going to be really important, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the reason why I like these pencil style weights is because I fish a lot of rocky areas, and this, when you do that, those rocky, rock piles and things like that, your pencil weight is really the weight that you want to use the most, because you won't lose that many. You can get this free from when it slides down in between those areas, and that's the biggest downfall of the other two, both the round and the teardrop. The teardrop is really like a hybrid between the two, but it's still going to get caught up more than this one will, just because it's a bigger area, and just by the shape of it coming down like this, it'll allow it to get some places and then not come back out. Weights are expensive and they're easy to lose as it is. That's why I really recommend these pencil style weights over the other two. Some companies don't even make the round ones anymore. So it's really important that you maintain constant contact with the bottom. That's why you want heavier weight. The only time there's a benefit to using a lighter weight is when those fish are suspended. Occasionally the fish will eat the bait on the way down. Doesn't happen very often. When it does, it's pretty great. But for the most part, you're targeting fish that are on the bottom, not suspended fish. So you really want that weight to be in constant contact with the bottom. You don't want it coming up and down, and if you use too light of a weight, that's going to happen. Or it'll take your bait forever to get down, and by the time it does reach the bottom, you're going to have let out so much line that your bait's actually going to be, 20, 30, maybe even 40 yards away from you, and your bait's going to be at an angle like this rather than being straight up and down. If it's not straight up and down, you're not going to have that really great solid, hook embedded in the skull of the fish like you want, and the fish is more likely to shake the bait. So that's why I really like this 3/4 ounce weight. Sometimes I'll even use 2 1/2 ounce weights if the waves are real big. As far as I'm concerned, I don't even know of a reason why you could have too much weight. As long as I'm in constant contact with the bottom, that isn't going to interfere with the sensitivity that I feel or anything else. The bait is above the weight, so any bite that happens is taking place above it. So no amount of weight is going to impact the sensitivity of the drop shot presentation whatsoever. Tie a knot on your weight when you attach it. You'll lose it a lot less. Sometimes I'll even use a speed snap on it, like you would use if you were swapping out crankbaits real fast, because that alone will reduce the amount of these that you lose 100 times over. And it's real easy to just add another one if you need to increase the amount of weight that you have on there to keep it down. So now we've gone over weights. Now I'm going to tell you what I look for when I approach a lake, especially a new lake. There are lots of mapping options out there now. Navionics has a great web app that you can look at on your computer. Anybody can do it. Go to navionics.com, click on the web app up at the top, and it'll bring up any lake you want to look at, the contour lines, and you can see with a tremendous amount of detail what there is. Humminbird also has a similar thing. I think you have to pay for that a little bit, but so from there I'll see, okay, these look like potential hotspots for me where I suspect there will be smallmouth located. And what I'm looking for there are areas in deeper water where you're definitely going to see a bunch of lines. You know, that signifies a lot of change in depth. So you're going to find humps and bumps, and that's how they're going to look. They're going to have bunches of lines, especially if they're tighter together. That means that that's a steeper drop. If they're more spread out, that's a more gradual drop. The closer they are, and the further away you are on the screen, the blacker that's going to be. As you zoom in closer and closer, you'll see those lines start to separate a little bit. That just signifies a deeper or a steeper transition. So either up or down, depending on, and it'll mark depth for you, so you'll be able to tell. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for areas where it's deep and it comes up like a little hump, especially if there's nothing else around. Right away, that tells me that there's a high probability, if everything else meets up, that there are fish there. Now, there are a lot of other factors that are going to come into play. What the bottom composition is like, if there's water discharges near there. Smallmouth don't like dirty water. They want clean water, and they'll go quite a distance to get it if they have to. But definitely I'm looking for those transition areas where there's humps like that, and especially if it says on the map, blank blank shoal or reef. You'll see, like at Oneida, it'll say Shackleton Shoals. Places like that, that's a great place to start. Then, when I go to the lake, I'll find those areas on my graph, and I'll drive there, slow down, and put the side scan on, and I'm going to start marking rocks and boulders, groups. And with the touchscreen graph, like the Helix 12, when you touch those areas, they'll just highlight, and you'll actually waypoint them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drive around and I'm going to waypoint as many of those boulders as I can, even if it takes me an hour. With my side scan on, I'm just going to mark as many of them as I can in different places in one particular area. Then I'm going to go back, go with the wind if there is any rather than against it, and I'm going to switch from side scan to down scan with my sonar, and I'm just going to start cruising over those rocks, and I'm going to look to mark fish. If you're in your traditional 2D sonar, colored screens, if it's the traditional yellow, red sort of thing, you're looking for a hard return. A hard return is something red. That's a fish or rock, or the darker it is, the more likely that is that that's a fish. That's a big fish. If you see a lot of yellow, that could signify bait or debris or grass. But you see a solid red mark, that's a fish, and that's a good fish. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to allow myself to continue to slowly drift past so that I don't spook that fish. If there are a couple more spots I have close by, I'll mark them real quick, drift past that 20 yards, start my motor, go back up, get about 30 yards above that spot so that I can get set with everything I need at the front, get my front graph on, get my trolling motor down, cast towards that fish, and drift into him and fish that fish vertical. Drop your rod down. You want to keep your rod steady, and you want to put that bait right in front of that fish's mouth and not move it. 99% of the time when I'm using a drop shot, I'm fishing vertical, and I do not move that bait at all. What you don't realize a lot of times, especially if you're fishing 40 feet, 50 feet, 60 feet, there's a lot of current on the bottom. Even if there's no current on the top, there's current on the bottom. And the baits that you're using, these finesse baits, they're so small, they're made to do things and to move with little to no work by you. Just a tiny amount of current will make that bait wave, make the tail do this, and that's all you want. You just want it to sit there and dance right in front of that fish, daring it to eat it. And that's what'll happen. If I drop on that fish and nothing happens after, 10, 20 seconds, I'll twitch it a little bit. I'll wait, twitch it a little bit, wait. If nothing happens, one time, I will shake it hard. I have experienced a time once where, for whatever reason, those fish needed to shake it like you were trying to shake money out of the pockets. I'm not going to tell you where I was, but I will tell you that if you get my book, it's in it. And the fish we caught were legendary. They were some of the biggest of my life. But that's the only time in all my life where I had to work the bait that hard to get the fish to eat it. Especially if you're fishing wacky, like I said, or a finesse bait, not moving it at all and letting the current do the work is the best bet. If you start moving that bait too much, you could actually pull the bait away from the fish and they could miss it. And if they do that too many times, they're just going to leave. So doing nothing really is your best bet. If you twitch the bait a little bit and you don't get bit, you can twitch it again a little bit. If still nothing, yank that bait out of there and quickly try something different back down on that fish. Either a spoon or a little tube, or maybe just something as simple as changing the color of your bait or putting a little scent on it. That can make all the difference. If after 15 or 20 minutes you can't get that fish to fire, move on. Go to the next spot, do the same thing. Mark the fish with your downscan, drift past them, come back, and attack with the same idea. Sometimes fish only fire at a particular time of day. 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9:30. So don't spend all day on one fish. Those smallmouth, especially the deep offshore fish, they should fire right away as soon as you drop on them. They're aggressive down there and they're not used to seeing a lot of people. That's one of the reasons why you can be very successful out deep. A lot of people don't understand what they're doing out there and won't go out there. They don't feel comfortable. They're used to pounding the bank, flipping docks. You can catch fish there. But if you can figure out how to fish deep, I promise you, you'll have some really fantastic days on the water. And 90% of the time, you'll be alone. So check that out. Don't forget, check out the other 2 videos where I talked about bait selection and hooks and knots. Give a thumbs up to support Susquehanna Fishing Tackle. Big thanks to them for putting out this series on dropshot. And if you have any questions or comments, comment below. And we thank you for shopping at sfttackle.com.